All right, everybody. We are live. Welcome back to Velvet Bite Radio. I'm your host, Melissa, and you know, there are some government secrets we are definitely not meant to know. And tonight, we're going to talk about that very topic because some of these secrets sound more like a psycho horror than actual history or, the runnings of government. Of course, tonight we're going to enter the shadows of Project MK Often. I always want to say MKUltra. It is MKUltra is the umbrella project that MK often falls under. And of course, it's a covert CIA operation that stepped beyond just espionage and it went into the world of the occult, which is psychics, sorcerers, paranormal investigators. And, you know, we're going to go there and talk about this, but we're also going to talk about what was the agency really trying to summon? Was it just one goal or did they have multiple goals? Did they have multiple objectives? We're going to find out. But of course, before we get into talking about this, I would request for you guys to, if you like this kind of topic, because we will be delving into these areas of the occult, because I feel like it weighs heavily in this sort of idea of assimilation, these kind of rituals that the elites believe in. So if you like this kind of material, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, click the thumbs up, leave a comment, save this to a playlist, like a watch later, because all that interaction helps the channel grow. And of course, everything's available at the website, melissadonharris.com. The TikTok, I put a lot of old videos. I'm collecting vintage videos. I think we're gonna have a show eventually on the Tuesday nights. I'm going to cover Robin Skelting and more natural witchcraft and more natural beliefs as opposed to the darker side. Which, the darker side, by the way, that's my guess. What's going on here is they're trying to subvert things into some weird dark place that nobody is interested in. So melissadonharris.com is the website. This Thursday, don't miss this one. I have Dennis Carroll as a guest, and we are talking vampires. Because Dennis Carroll is a self-professed vampire hunter and researcher, and he's coming on the show. That is 9 p.m. Eastern. We will be live this Saturday at 6 p.m. Mountain Time. I believe that would make it 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. I'm going to be a guest on Walter Bosley's channel with him. And I'm going to be on the show California. I think we're going to talk about the show we did a week ago, all about The Exorcist. And that as, again, MK Ultra. And this is all tied together, in the occult. All of this stuff. 100%. So I'll share that link. Remember to be subscribed to that YouTube channel and always check the posts, because I'm usually putting under the posts tab, and you guys in the community can post stuff there too. I've opened it up so people can post stuff and let me know what they want to see. Feel free to post there, but I'll let you know what the link is. You can go to Walter Bosley's channel. I'll be there. Todd Wood is also on that show, California. I just seen Walter Bosley. He was on Kurt Metzinger's show. And Kurt Metzinger also runs a show with Jimmy Dore. So pretty cool that he was on there talking about this stuff, because Kurt is right into, this is up his alley. He's into a lot of this stuff. And it goes, look, this stuff, we may have some Christians floating that are, believe in satanic stuff. That is like Sesame Street version. Like, oh, they're all Satanists. This stuff goes really deep and really into the fray. All right, K. Sean, good to see you here. KY Sean, we've got Jonacide in the room. Incognito, hello. Mrs. Jonacide, Renee, welcome. Glad to see that. It's really quite the circumstance that we're talking about here. And everyone has always talked about MKUltra, and I think often it's not something new. It's not like people didn't know that this was a thing. This is I've read posts from 10 years. I actually have an article from back in the 70s that talked about the idea that the CIA wasn't only, just trying to do experiment with drugs or LSD or do some kind of mind control. They were infiltrating the paranormal, the occult, Satanists. And it makes me question now all of the content that's on TV 100%. Now that I know that, I'm like, okay, I had this feeling, and I would say this to my husband. It feels wrong. All of the ghost shows, all of the stuff, it feels silly. It feels like that can't possibly be, because I've lived in haunted houses, and we didn't have to have all these tools and sit there at night with an EMF reader shouting at the ghost. That's not how it happened. It's just weird. And I was always thought, this is so bizarre. And now that I see that the CIA was infiltrating, and I don't think it's just one reason, by the way. I think it's multiple. If the CIA is going to do something, they're going to come at it from multiple different layers, multiple different angles. They're not just going to say, hey, we just want these people to believe bad things about the paranormal. Like, that's probably the least. And that's probably the least of it. So here we go into crazy land. I was over at Reddit, and someone was warning not to delve deep into this, that it will drive you crazy. So we're going to observe and not absorb. Observe, not absorb. Because you don't want to go crazy. I don't want to go crazy. And what I want to remind Kirby in the room, welcome Kirby. It's good to see you guys here. Remember, if you're not subscribed, subscribe. I know most of you are subscribed that are here now. I don't want us all to go crazy. And it's why I always remind people about the little me concept. That's what they want you to keep thinking. And so we're not going to go crazy learning about what they're doing in the occult, because we're not little me's. We control our thoughts. Our thoughts have power. So we're not going to go nuts. We're going to observe and not absorb. And I always warn people to, when it comes to politics or anything, occult, anything, because obviously they're harnessing the occult and spirituality to control people, as they always do. I'd say avoid massive gatherings, avoid giant political rallies, avoid gatherings that you don't know too much about, that are requiring you to do things that are uncomfortable. Avoid wearing logos. Don't wear a political logo. It doesn't matter what party it is. Don't brand yourself like a cow. Avoid donating money to politics. They have lots of it. Textile treasure talk. Thank you. Thank you. I also said, I didn't say this before, but avoid donating too much of your time to them. Okay. I was listening to this wonderful podcast by Niche. She has the show Cosmic Salon. And they were describing it. She had this guest on. They were talking about symbolism, and it was really wonderful. I encourage you to go look up her podcast, Cosmic Salon. I'll probably have her and Jer as a guest again soon on the show. But life it's like there's a figure, or there's an element at the center of everything. And all the people and all the followers, hi Todd, they kind of rotate around that follower or that leader. So, and there's a carriage of energy. So the leader needs the people to rotate around him. The closer you are to the leader in the inner circle, the higher the gravity is, the more you're going to be controlled by it, right? So the leader needs you to hover around, and the farther away you are, it's a lesser control of gravity. Observe, don't absorb means you want to stay on those peripherals and wait to see if you hear things from the people in the center that are closest to it, right? You want to wait for that, because the people that are closest to it, they are going to be doing all those things. They're going to be going to the gatherings. They're going to be wearing the logos. They're going to be donating the money. They're going to be donating all their time. They're going to be spending a lot of their life energy on it. So you kind of want to stay at the periphery of everything. Yeah, guys, go. We got Todd Wood in the room. We got Matthew Lee Embleton. Thank you so much. Go and check out Cosmic Salon. Niche is a really good friend, and she is a good show. I was listening to it earlier today. But there's this, that's the kind of get up everywhere, even in the universe, is that the closer you are to the center, the more you kind of get drawn into the chaos of it all. And I warn everybody, you're not a little you. You're an individual and you're in a group at the same time. Two things happen at once, but I would avoid massive gatherings, avoid wearing logos, avoid donating your money to these people, and avoid donating too much time. You can donate some, but I would be at the periphery and watching in, because you can always learn how to kind of remote view, right? You can always learn how to view into them as much as they view into you. It can be done. Kenneth Johnson, welcome to the show. Make sure to subscribe. Like I told you guys, I'm going to be on Walter's show with Todd on Saturday, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, 5 p.m. Pacific. Dennis Carroll's on. He's coming on Thursday. We're talking about vampires because he's a vampire hunter. But let's get into this idea of the CIA, because it's spooky. And I wanted to do that warning that you're not the little you. We're not going to go crazy talking about this, because I've seen people warning me, you're going to go nuts. Because we're not going to go into the center, in the dark core around these people. We're going to stay on the peripheral. And if it's too much, you just say, okay, I've observed too much and I'm taking a break. That's all we're going to do. We're going to stay calm here. We're going to stay calm. I've got a quick little video footage. I'm going to take a thank you, Kenneth. Thank you for being subscribed. That's wonderful. I'm going to show you a clip that I got on TikTok, and it really is going to set it up. And we're going to talk about some of the people that are involved and could be involved. And I'm going to show you footage from even long before the CIA existed, showing that this stuff has been happening within intelligence agencies and occultism and elite people for quite a while. So let's check out this clip. I'm going to take a voice break, and you guys enjoy.
The US government secretly hired psychics, witches, and occultists not to study them, but to weaponize them. Its name? Project MK, often in 1968, under the watch of Dr. Sidney Gottlieb, who was the chief of the CIA's Technical Services Division, a man once dubbed the Black Sorcerer of the CIA, along with his associate Dr. Stephen Aldrich, led the classified program. They began to recruit individuals associated with black magic, spirit mediums, demonology, astrology, and those with psychic channeling abilities. MK often's operatives scouted and recruited mediums in California, astrologers from New York, witches from New Orleans, and occult scholars from Princeton and Duke University. Research was also conducted into communication with non-human entities, spiritual or otherwise, as a potential intelligence source. The activities conducted were clinical testing, remote viewing, telepathy, psychokinesis, and even summoning external entities under controlled conditions. As for the occult ritual simulations, which was a process to reconstruct ceremonial magic practices in a laboratory setting. One example of this was Aleister Crowley's rituals, which were allegedly studied for their psychological impact and potential use in induced spiritual terror. Here are a few of the individuals that were consulted. Sybil Leek, the famous witch and astrologer at the time, was approached for her insights into political forecasting. Then we have Andrea Puharich, a parapsychologist and inventor linked to early psychic research and mind-machine communication, is believed to have consulted unofficially. The Church of Satan founder Anton LaVey was even rumored to have been indirectly contacted. Psychological tactics often blurred into weaponized superstition, manipulating enemy populations through fear of spirits, curses, and unseen forces. One former intelligence officer, Colonel John Alexander, later revealed, there was far more interest in the paranormal by the US government than anyone was willing to admit.
All right, that's pure dark light. So if you're a TikToker, you can follow him. But he lays it out very good, and some of the people involved. Let's start with Sybil Leek. She was a psychic. I actually have video footage of her. We'll check it out in a moment. But she not only was consulted for her channeling psychic powers, witchcraft powers, she was also an informant. She was telling the CIA, that where the covens were, where the witches were, where the people were operating. She was letting them know what was happening so they could either infiltrate and check it out, maybe some other, or break it up. And at the time, remember, a lot of things were a threat to the CIA, especially if they were in nature. So there could be different reasons for this, for wanting to infiltrate. One could be that you want to get in there and break it up. Maybe they're anti-war, they're peaceful, or you want to infiltrate it so that you can learn about it and subvert it. Make a nature religion, somebody who's peaceful and is connecting to their identity or some kind of heritage that they have. You can subvert it so that it's now not that the public doesn't see it as this peaceful entity. The public sees it as this really negative to the devil. And we know the devil is a made up concept. Heaven and hell is a made up concept in the Bible. You know, when Jesus refers to hell, he's talking about, I believe, Hellel, which was literally the name of a garbage dump in town. Like, he's literally saying, if you live a shitty life, your life's going to be like a garbage dump. And everyone's like, oh my God. They took that and turned that into an eternal place of damnation. And that's control factor. That's fear, right? So this idea, that, there's demons and there's hells. There might be different levels and layers and places you can go where negative things exist. But the idea of eternal damnation is a very Christian, shall I say, Roman concept, because Roman concept that got created under Christianity. It didn't exist in Rome, but we know the Catholic Church is Rome anyways. It just subverted. But so Sybil Leek, I'm going to pop in and let's watch a clip of Sybil, because I want you to see who she is. I want you to get a sense of her energy. And because she's no... an interesting woman, I'll say that, but we're going to see who Sybil Leek is. And we're going to take a look at her. This is her in 1972, so she's probably well in with the CIA by this point.
Well, let me ask you, what is witchcraft?
For me, it's a religion, and nothing
Dating
to do
back
with...
to the Druid period?
Yes, I'm a Druid. And it goes well back to the time when men were just...
I just want to read you the comments. People are saying, her soul is so peaceful and beautiful. Oh, Sybil Leek. I'm going to look her up. Everybody is so... this is from the same guy that did the other one. But Sybil Leek was informing. She was an informant for the CIA. And I just find her kind of gross. I don't find she has good energy at all. I find her gross. Yeah. What do you think in the comments?
Themselves.
Even then, in this concept,
Yes,
there was the
it has
feeling
to
of a
be.
greater power.
There has to be something
I
greater
agree.
than us. And I'm not anti-religious. I think I'm anti-hypocrisy.
I agree with you.
I think if you're a Roman Catholic, be a very good Roman Catholic. If you're a Protestant, be a very good Protestant. And I think if you're a witch, be...
And if you're a CIA spy, be a very good CIA spy. I doubt. So Jonaside doesn't think LaVey would be used because he would have promoted that. Here's the thing. I disagree with that. They would have tested him first. So if he was, they would have tested to see if he would have promoted that. I think there's a good chance he was, just because of location, because he lived in San Francisco. The CIA operated in San Francisco. A lot of creepy things happen out of San Francisco. So I think it's worth looking into. I can't find an exact link. In fact, the stuff that has been released on MK often doesn't really detail who, what, where. It's very vague. It doesn't even detail anything about psychics, but we know they did. But a lot of people think she's good. I think she's got gross energy. I don't like her at all. There's just something about her that I don't like. But that's her. She was a big psychic in her days, and she was a big, no pun intended, but she was a very popular witch. The other reason you should always be suspicious of people, especially in this time, is when they're on popular talk shows. That means that they've gotten past all of the checks and balances and put on the show for a reason. And anything that's a popular talk show is going to be infiltrated and ran by the CIA. It's also why I'm suspicious of Anton LaVey, because he's on these talk shows promoting, and he was diverting Christianity. And so they're controlling one avenue and another. They're controlling the peaceful witches. They want to infiltrate everywhere because they can see in the culture that things are changing, that with all of this sort of counterculture stuff, that things are changing, that people aren't just staying Christianity. So they still have to control all the narratives. And remember, beyond controlling narratives, there is, of course, the whole notion that elites like to control the occult. And they want you to think that there's no power, or they want you to think of the occult in a specific way so you don't have real power. They like to control it. You can go back to Nazi Germany. They would have arrested you if you were doing occult stuff, but they were doing occultism like crazy. And Lord knows what they found, but I'm sure they found something. Some people call it border science. There was a fellow, I have his book, it's in storage, unfortunately. Kurlander was his last name, and he wrote a book on Nazis and the occult. He called it Border Sciences, where they, basically were participating in magical rituals. But I don't think that the CIA would be wasting their time. I could be wrong. There could be tons of incompetent people in the CIA that are moronic, but I don't think they would be wasting their time on this if they didn't think there was something to it. Plus, the Russians, the Soviet Union, was doing a lot of research in this area, so got to keep up with the times. Sorry. But Sybil Leek was one, and she, maybe the other witches knew it or they didn't know it, but she kind of betrayed them. She's fed information about where they were. Now, maybe she didn't have a choice. I have a feeling a lot of these people were approached. They were scouted out for a while and watched by the CIA, and the CIA decided which ones would be good. So Sybil Leek is one of many of those psychics. Now, I looked up. We talked about the Warrens, and they got a sketchy history. I cannot find any information that says the Warrens had anything to do with any FBI or any CIA or anything like that. I can't find anything about that, but they do have some sketch. And remember, the other week we were talking about the Warrens, and I played a clip where, I'll just play it again for you guys. They're in the museum that Ed Warren had that was in his basement, or in a place off the property or off the side of the house. And it was their collection of occult stuff that was all cursed. And he points out to his son-in-law this one occult item. And he says that they found it in Sandy Hook area. So I found that really interesting, that they live in that area and it's full of stuff. It's a possibility, either that they were influenced by things that were out there that the CIA had already put out there. They're very Catholic. Or that they had it. I can't find anything on that at all. Not whatsoever. Anton LaVey, the fact that he was in San Francisco is what makes me suspicious of him, and that he was on a lot of the major talk shows, showing off the Satanism in a certain way. I mean, if he worked for the CIA and he dare spoke about it, he would have been in trouble. So he's an idiot, but I don't think he's that much of an idiot. I don't think he would do that. I want to travel back a little before we talk. I mean, Sybil Leek was just one. Oh, there's probably Jack Parsons, of course, did the Moonchild ritual. That's crazy. That's so wackadoodle crazy. Okay. And the other reason I think the Warrens might have been is because of demonology. Yeah, so they're doing tests on these people. Todd's got a really good point. I think they got lab results in the lab and began performing field tests. That's the cult problem in California. Yeah, doing their experimentation on mind control. And there's also the question of, were people trying to reach different entities? Because they literally based some of their research off of really dark rituals that Aleister Crowley was doing. And I've got the Aleister Crowley book here. It's out of print. You can't get it anymore. You probably find it on eBay. It's called The Magical Record of the Beast 666, The Journals of Aleister Crowley. Crowley. It's Crowley. It's not Crowley. Right here. And this is his time in America where he's journaling all his rituals right out. And he literally writes it. And as he gets more engrossed in the ritual and time goes along, first they're shorter little bits and then they become weird. You can tell he's high on drugs. But it's interesting because Aleister Crowley was British intelligence during World War I. So this idea isn't anything new. That you have some occultist moonlighting or operating within the government agencies or within the military or as a spy, as he was. Hey, John Connor. I think that if the CIA was involved with LaVey, he would have been bigger and be less fringe. He was a carny, so there's that. He was on major talk shows. I've got several clips of him on talk shows getting massive, massive exposure. So I don't think he was just a carny. I mean, I knew about him when I was a kid, and people I knew had his books. So I don't think he was, I mean, he's fringe because of how dark he is with the Church of Satan, but I mean, he was talked about in major movies. You had Rosemary's Baby. He was in the culture. And I remember hearing it. I remember my mother talking about him. So he wasn't a nobody that was just a carny. I don't know if I agree with that entirely. I've got several big talk shows, him right there talking about the Church of Satanism and how disruptive it was. So yeah, this is Aleister Crowley, his journals, him talking about his rituals. They take this stuff, information like this, the CIA, and they're using it and testing it out and experimenting to see if it works. And I do believe there's top people in these CIAs and these organizations that do believe it. Yeah. John Connor says, Anton LaVey was big in Hollywood. He was. I mean, he literally, Jane Mansfield was there and everything. And the CIA was involved with Hollywood, so it makes sense that there was a connection. Absolutely. He wasn't just a carny. I mean, James Mansfield, there's tons of pictures of him with James Mansfield. And there's a curse. There's this idea that James Mansfield was cursed by Anton LaVey. That's a whole conspiracy theory. And we know she died a really tragic death. But I want to talk about this idea pre-CIA, pre-MK often. The idea that rituals were being experimented. Yep, he was friends with Sammy Davis Jr. too. That's right. So big Hollywood stuff, and Hollywood's important. And then you see that influence out in the movies. So anyways, back to where I was going. What I want to look at is this idea of ritualistic stuff happening long before MK often. In fact, during World War II, when witchcraft was illegal, the king of the witches, Gerald Gardner, who was the creator of Wicca, did rituals in order to stave Hitler off. Now, you hear that today with people doing rituals and they're going to curse Trump or they're going to curse Biden or Kamala, and it seems not to work. And I think if you're going to do a ritual, maybe you want to be quiet about it. The secrecy is part of the test. You want to be quiet about it. You don't want to, open up a Facebook profile event page and be like, hey, let's curse Trump, or let's curse, you probably shouldn't curse people anyways. It's bad karma. It's bad mojo. But you probably shouldn't tell anybody what you're doing. And when Gerald Gardner did this, they're in absolute secrecy. 100% him and a group of witches, a lot of them were older, gathered in order to stave off Adolf Hitler. And I'm going to play you a clip. We're going to talk about that, because this whole idea of occultism with military, government, spy, Aleister Crowley was involved in World War I. This is not new. It's not new under the sun. Check this out.
He was about to test his newfound magical powers against something truly dangerous. As just across the sea, Hitler began to threaten invasion. When he wasn't casting spells, Gerald was also a prominent member of the local Home Guard.
And so, it made sense to Gerald to prepare to repel the Nazis, not just with rusty bayonets, but with magic. And on one night in 1940, that's exactly what he and his coven are said to have done.
We were taken at night to a place in the forest where the Great Circle was erected.
I've come to the depths of the New Forest in search of the exact location of this famous magical encounter. And here to talk me through it is Gerald's biographer, Philip Heselton.
Yes, hello, Ronald. Glad you found it all right. We're here because Gerald Gardner said we were taken at night to a place in the forest. And there we created the largest cone of power that we had ever attempted.
What's a cone of power?
Well, it's not a physical cone. It is something magical, a thought form, if you like.
For Gerald, the threat of German invasion was the perfect opportunity to demonstrate the true power of Wiccan magic.
And the great cone of power was raised and slowly directed in the general direction of Hitler.
They built up power, dancing quickly round. And then when that power had reached its climax, there was this cone of power which could be seen by those who were sensitive to these things.
The command was given. You cannot cross the sea. You cannot cross the sea.
They rushed towards the fire, at the same time raising this cone of power and sending it over to the German High Command, and indeed.
Okay, see how he described that as a thought form? This is why they're so concerned with what we think and how we think and what we believe, because they know that thought forms in their ritual practice equal something. They were sending that over as a thought form. And they did this ritual that created, and they're going around in a circle. They're creating, not only are they chanting something over and over and over again, and they believed in nudity. Look, Gerald Gardner was a nudist, a little bit of a BDSMer as well. But they're going around in a circle and they're chanting over and over and over, and they're putting all their energy and their mind into it. They're creating a thought form. Do you believe it? I don't know, but I think the CIA definitely had some concept, and I think that was one of Germany's biggest weakness, because they were into the occult too, but they were also into drugs and psychedelics. And you can argue this with me. I don't care if you do psychedelics as part of letting go. I think eventually it breaks the mind down and makes it weakened over time. I think it's better to stay sober when you do your magic. And thought forms. So this is why I think that the CIA is what they're really concerned with, is creating not only so they're not just doing the ritual, they create the media and the propaganda that keeps the thought forms going without them having to be there. It's like autoplay thought form. And so you're seeing this in World War II. And Gerald Gardner, he worked for the Guard, the National Guard or something. He was, before he retired to that village and started Wicca, he worked for the military somewhere in some way. So there is that. And of course, Aleister Crowley. It's weird because it seems like the CIA and the people in the CIA obviously want to steer things to the dark side. And we can't get into any of this stuff with NASA without looking at Jack Parsons and his witchcraft and how Jack Parsons was affiliated with Aleister Crowley. In fact, Aleister Crowley talked to Parsons on a regular basis. But even he thought Parsons was a little nuts. They were doing this ritual. So you hear about that ritual there. You see Gerald Gardner. But Jack Parsons and company were doing a ritual to produce a moonchild. This is something that's talked about in Thelema that Crowley talks about. And even Crowley, yes, John Aside's reminding us that Crowley wrote a lot of the Gardner stuff. They knew each other. And a lot of the Wiccans get a little upset about that, but he did know Gardner big time. They were all associated, and we'll get there. But Jack Parsons was doing the moonchild ritual, which Crowley thought actually was kind of nutty. He was like, "Oh, okay." He was older. He was like, "These guys are bonkers." But Crowley and Gardner, the interesting thing to know about that in terms of the occult is it's about what they believe, and that elites practice the occult. Okay, Crowley, he's from, his father was Plymouth Brethren. They made their riches on selling ale in a brewery. So he was left with a big fortune. So he was in there with the elites. Would he go to Cambridge? And so he originally started off with the occult by joining the Golden Dawn. And the Golden Dawn has the likes of Bram Stoker. We talk about Dracula on this channel and vampires on Thursday nights. Bram Stoker was in with this stuff. These guys are all in with ritual magic. And Crowley diverts and takes this more extreme position. And that's the stuff right here and all his other book that the CIA is using as a template on what to do. Because Crowley was experimenting with drugs the same way that, say, the CIA started to do. LSD. In this book, if I can find it, I'll tell you. He talks about what he's using. I mean, he details it. He says, for instance, April the 13th, that's my birthday. Wow, the fact that I switched to this page is kind of creepy. April the 13th, 1:50 p.m. Circa, assistance as 11, Von Kothik. He says, the object is magical energy. Operation Good, elixir, not a first-rate quality, whatever elixir they're using. He says, Operation 12, the result of the operations were, of which had as their object sex, force, and attraction. Note that on the 29th of March, I phoned Hotel Seville, where presumably he had first contact. So he's talking about this person. But he literally, every day, and Roman numeral numbered, he details April 21st. I felt very weak at first. Climax 2, not so good, as has been the case hitherto. And he tells you about what he's doing. The rituals, what happened, how he felt. He's almost approaching it in a scientific, methodical way, writing things down about the day and the time. So it's a really hard to get book. I happened upon it in Victoria, British Columbia in an occult bookstore, and I had to pay a pretty penny for it. So I'm not a Thelemite. I don't like the dark energy kind of crazy, let's do the most depraved stuff. I'm not into that, but I definitely wanted this as literature to research. So just so you know that I'm not running around practicing Thelema, although I have a guest coming in October, Gary Parsons, no relation to Jack Parsons, whose father worked for Hammer Horror, who is a Thelemite. And I try not to judge that too harshly. But Crowley is, like I said, the elites, all the things that they do is tied to the occult. That's why I find it very hard to believe that nobody actually believes that they're all atheists and they don't believe in any kind of power. And Jack Parsons died. You know, it's interesting too, because I think there's a price to pay when you do these really horrific rituals that are about power, that are about money, that are about manipulating other people. I think there's a price that you pay. As opposed to if you believe in harm none or be peaceful or just influence things for the better. I don't think that's what the CIA is doing, and I don't think you should think that either, but that's up to you. Let's go back here. I'm going to take some if you guys have any comments, let me know. Oh, this guy's interesting. Anton LaVey I've got a whole bunch of videos saved. This is one I wanted to show you guys. It's a good one where he talks about this. So let's go here for a moment and give my voice a rest.
All the scientists that were assigned to researching him started having the hitchhiker effect in their homes and their families. The branch of the CIA called MKUltra, and this branch, that was their thing, was that they got into the occult and esoteric, pretty much kind of like the Ahnenerbe was the Nazis' version. You know, they had several things like the Thule Society and Vril, but it was the Ahnenerbe who was really steeped in the occult as well as the Vril. But yeah, MKUltra, I mean, they would infiltrate seances. They would send members in seances. They actually openly talked with witches, active witches. In fact, one of the most well-known witches, this well-known witch was Sybil Leek.
Okay, so there's something about seances, and you know in Christianity they tell you don't talk with the devil, don't do this, don't do Ouija boards. There could be a very important reason for that, but there also could be that they want to control how the world runs, and they know that you can contact things or, you know, have seances and get alternate information. That's why they were heavy with the CIA into looking at remote viewing. And I think part of the reason as well is when they're going into these seances, it's about learning how to remote view. It's about learning how to look at things in a different way. It's also about, remember, the CIA created the internet, or at least a division of it, or people from it were involved in it. It's about copying the organic form of communication into a less organic form that we have now, in which you control the whole system and how people think and what information people see. Is the ultimate mind control. It's the ultimate thought form. We could all be creating this tech thought form right now. I could be feeding into it. That's why they're like, okay, we have to decide whose thoughts get out the most, and with the algorithm. So I think it all gets a little convoluted, but they definitely want to understand how this power is working. There's also the idea, too, that once they know, if you believe any superstitions, they can use it against you. They can use your religion, your power. They can convert it and use it against you. We'll get back to this video as they did. We'll pop this up. They faked vampire crimes in the Philippines in the 50s. They played ghost recordings in the jungle during Vietnam. You see, they use this stuff to mind F you. So they can make you afraid. Right? They do this stuff all the time. And so you have to be careful with what you believe and being afraid. So let's continue with this video.
This lady, she was so well known that H.G. Wells, Lawrence of Arabia, and Aleister Crowley all used to visit her back when she was 9 years old. Her family was that connected. In fact, when MKUltra was dealing with her and approaching her, she would tell them where the most active covens were. All the different locations of witches and covens all around the world. I mean, you know that also, what was it, Crowley and several of his colleagues, they all worked with British intelligence. So yeah, that's another thing, is like a lot of these people that are steeped in the occult and witchcraft and things like that, and demonic and satanic rituals, also have a lot to do with spies and spy agents.
He paused when he said that. He's like, with spies, like there's a spy right there going to take him out. But it's true, and we just pointed that out. Renee says she was talking about Gardner. She talked about a pervert. Well, Crowley was a pervert, way worse than Gardner, and Gardner was. He was a nudist, and he liked a little BDSM. He kind of had a little pervert there, 100%. But I mean, to each their own. I certainly wouldn't go, like I said, I don't go to big groups, and I wouldn't get naked and start running around in a circle chanting with some, witchy looking guy. It wouldn't be what I would want to do.
That she witnessed satanic rituals going on out at military bases. And she said that a lot of the people that are mixed up in the naval intelligence, not all of them, but a lot of them, are mixed up with the OTO, the Ordo Templi Orientis.
Okay, so the OTO is kind of, I think Crowley tried to kind of overtake that. But when he was writing some of his books, like the Book of the Law and the Book of Lies, the OTO approached him and said, "Hey, dude, why are you giving our secrets away?" And he didn't know what they were talking about because his wife had channeled a lot of this information when they were in Egypt. And he wrote a lot of this through channeling in his own rituals. And so the OTO, they kind of line up with what Crowley would eventually create Thelema. But they line up, and I think he at one time tried to be involved with them, but Crowley's he's a one track kind of guy doing his own thing. And so he's telling you, and I know my husband was he was in naval intelligence, so that's really interesting that he's saying they're all OTO. I don't know, he might be able to say if I don't think he's seen anything like that. I don't think so. And he certainly wasn't in OTO. So interesting stuff, though. Interesting stuff.
There was programming. They used military bases because they won't have any interference when they have someone on a military base. And a lot of my programming took place on military bases. I would like to talk about the fact that there are rituals done at the military bases also, and that rituals are not a cover. The people that do the mind control are involved, and rituals are very much a part of how they do things.
I don't know if you've read the book about Laurel Canyon. Have you read any of that stuff and looked into it? Oh man, yeah, the whole hippie movement. And I touched a little bit on this because people like Timothy Leary, who was big on promoting LSD and things like that, this was all part of the CIA and their MKUltra, as well as MKUltra and all that. In fact, this goes all the way back to Edgewood Arsenal. And they needed a giant pool of test subjects. So they were using the American public as guinea pigs. They've been dealing with they've been initiating satanic rituals at all levels of government because they are trying to tap into these things. They want to make contact. It's no different than John Dee back when he was the person that worked for Queen Elizabeth. All the scientists that were assigned.
Okay, so you hear him saying all levels of government are working with this. This would have to be incredibly secretive because people would flip, and people are kind of flipping. It's why people said don't dig too deep in this. You can go crazy. And there was some good commentary saying light always wins, but you do have to counteract it with light. I got my little rock here that I'm holding, like, God damn, keep that shit away from me. But it's certainly spooky to think that there's a possibility that your government at the upper echelons and crust of the elites is full of people who are Satanists, who are tapping in. Basically what they're doing, instead of tapping in to a place that's good, they're literally, they must, if they're doing sex rituals. This is one of the things that I find weird about people who idolize Crowley, is he's staying in the base chakra with addiction, drugs, sex. It's all base chakra. It's not really enlightenment. So they're staying somewhere that's kind of heavier, and they're not moving up the basis. They're depending on sex as magic. And I find that strange. I don't know if anyone agrees with me out there, but I find it strange that they would stay there. I mean, and they're contaminating sex. They're making it perverted. I'm glad you mentioned the Navy. You know who else was in the Navy? This is from Todd. Stanley Dean Baker. Interesting. Is he? I'm going to have to Google him. There is a lot. A Welsh actor? Oh no, that's different. He's a killer. Oh boy. Yeah. Cannibalistic killer too. Ouch. That's not good. There's a lot of one of the other reasons I thought the Warrens might have some kind of in is because I believe Ed Warren, he fought in World War II in the Navy. I'm pretty sure he did. So just because he did doesn't mean he's involved. My husband was in the Navy. He didn't get involved in any weird stuff. So like he said, some, not all. Some, not all. It's bizarre and strange stuff. Just like with the, the Air Force and MKUltra, they're running their own stuff and no one will probably ever know what they're running. Other operations were happening in terms of witchcraft. And I think that too is why you see an explosion of it in movies. Rosemary's Baby, The Exorcist, the Omen. You know, you see an explosion of this stuff that leads to satanic panic because they're putting it out there for some kind of influence and ritual into the public. And like I said, people like Anton LaVey, the fact that he lived in San Francisco, I mean, it doesn't mean it, but CIA had the head office in there. Jim Jones, he went to San Francisco the minute he'd made that switch and convinced everybody to move out there. He was 100%. We've done a show on this before. You can go in my archives and look at it. He was 100% a CIA agent, an operative. You know, the land that he did, and he was into magic. You know, Jim Jones, the CIA had him in Venezuela. They reported in the newspaper that he was a CIA agent, and they were getting him to learn all sorts of stuff: voodoo, hoodoo, mind control, all in South America. 100% that was written about, and it's in lots of documentaries. It's easy information to find. So San Francisco was this hub, and I think the CIA is around there because you got Haight-Ashbury. You have people who were actually peaceful. Go read the book Chaos. They talk about how they're infiltrating all these groups to invert them and turn them in and destroy them and break them up and turn them into something negative instead of a peaceful anti-war group. It's part of it. The other part is if you want war, you're going to fuel that war. You got to fuel that war. You got to control the public's mind, and you got to do your rituals. You got to sacrifice to your negative, demonic attachments. I don't know what else to call it because I don't do prayers and stuff to satanic beings. So, and Satanism is really so. Satanism is not even a really way I want to put it. I think I want to go deeper and say, look, they take the thoughts, they twist our thoughts, and they turn it into a negative form because they know it gives them a certain type of energy. It's just a certain type of energy. That's why, children are a good object to scare and frighten to get these energies because they have less control. The CIA charter says they won't operate on American soil. Well, that was the whole point. You know, they got kind of busted. So they were trying to break up MKUltra. And I think that was the point in sending Jim Jones, because the land that Jim Jones was operating Jonestown on was owned by the CIA. I don't have time to go into that, but it was owned by the CIA. It was operated by the CIA. They had it picked out for him. So now they're not operating on American soil. They're operating, over in Guyana. Easy. They was owned by them. They had used it to train military soldiers previous to do certain overtaking of different governments. I go into specifics about that on the Jim Jones show that I do, and I'm sure it's still in my archives on the YouTube channel. I'll have a look here And I did it as a live stream because we live streamed a documentary about it. It gives the easiest way for me to convey that for you guys. But let's see. Yeah, here it is. Jim Jones, Politics, the CIA, and His Evil Legacy. So we have one show about it, and then I go deeper into other shows. I've talked about it on Forbidden Knowledge Network. I might have unlisted it. I think I might have got a doc on it, and I've unlisted it. So, but I did talk about that, and the crazy MKUltra stuff that's going on with Jim Jones, and how involved he was, seriously involved in politics and the CIA, and to what end? To do a weird experiment on the people and manipulate them with their own spiritual beliefs. This one, and then I'll get to Renee's. Todd Wood says, so Manson lived in San Francisco as well as a process church in the Final Judgment. Like Todd was saying, it's like a collective of cults there. It's like a collective of cults and crazy activity. Even Ted Bundy had ventured down to California and operated there. Renee says, for the last 2 decades, the Catholic Church have been looking for people willing to learn about exorcism since there has been so many requests. Yeah. It's in the zeitgeist. People are brainwashed to allow this stuff to come in. CIA consultants fake quit, and then operatives fake quit, and then they consult. Yeah, they become consultants. Oh, I'm just going to quit and be a consultant. Whoops. How convenient is that? Yeah, so this whole idea of hiring psychics, though, what it should tell us, it could tell us that they're trying to engineer what the paranormal is. It's why every time I watch a paranormal show on TV, I know that it's garbage. It's crap. It's and when I see people do these seances with, or they have their boxes and their EMF meters, and like, who told you that that's a ghost? Like, how do you know? Because TV told them. Because TV told them that's how you do it. Because that's what they want you to know. They wouldn't let it on TV if it actually gave you any power. That's my opinion. That's my personal opinion. Okay, so let's go into sharing time because I've got an article here. He was actually from the 70s. So this isn't, people knew about this at the time. Okay. Reason has this. Free minds and free markets. Experience the CIA and the occult. It was written by James Davidson from the March 1978 issue. He says it's not an article exposing CIA infiltration of witches' coven. This is a story yet to be written. Perhaps it will be when the reporters of the New York Times or some other well-connected publication next encounter an informed source, in quotation marks, in an amply stocked bar. I think he's making fun of the New York Times. We all know New York Times is a psyop, right? Like, it's the CIA feeds them stories. That's why they have it before anyone else. If such a story should emerge, no one should be surprised. We have already learned that the CIA has experimented in mind control. The agency even went so far as to hire John Mulholland, the New York magician, to help teach what Admiral Turner has called aspects of magician's art, useful in covert operation. It would be a short step from there to contract with witches to perform maleficia in the national interest. We're going to perform. It's in the national interest. Okay. Intended connections between the CIA and the occult were far more reaching than anyone expects. This is in 1978 that he wrote this. Okay, this isn't now. They could only be insignificant in comparisons to the unintended support. In fact, the bounding popularity of astrology, necromancy, numerology, ufology, and other numerous manifestations of the occult may be due more to the antics of the CIA than any other cause. The reason is that the CIA has helped generate an epistemological crisis. It has done something far more damaging than any given act of intrigue or infiltration. It has shattered the popular impression of what reality is, thus putting people in the properly confused state of mind to subscribe to beyond reality. In one convincing demonstration after another, the CIA has taught us that things may not be as they seem. The convolutions and twists which have arisen as a consequence of the CIA, intrigues, assassination plots, distortion of the news, and so on make a difference. They have placed domestic and international affairs within the category of phenomena, which they seem to lie beyond the realm of human understanding. Consequently, a new habit of mind develops among the populace. They're breeding a certain thinking, doubting the validity of explicit discourse because it may be and often has been distorted by false information. People distinguish between the surface explanation and the real meaning. Conjectures replace logical analysis of known facts as the basis of understanding. When the secret agent is revealed as being a double agent on his way to being a triple agent, the lesson that everything is not as meets the eye becomes unavoidable. Okay. Let's see. Thanks largely to the CIA and the approach to politics, which its proponents have so vigorously pursued in recent time, the mindset of the younger half of the population has been formed in an atmosphere of suspicion. So people were suspicious of it then. The practitioner of the occult is one who accepts the fact that many phenomena, agencies, and influence eclipse human understanding. To a certain extent, this may be laudable intellectual modesty. There is no doubt that man will never complete the task of unlocking the secrets of the universe. We should face the ultimate boredom if there was nothing left to know. But that is not the whole of the occult attitude. It is more a surrender of rational analysis. The believer in astrology never attempts to comprehend the presumed process by which the positions of the star are alleged to determine human fate. So he's saying, in his opinion, that they're using this stuff to control people to make them less logical and questionable. And maybe, again, that's why it's posed out there. I don't know what you guys think. I do personally think there's something to astrology. But you also want to have a logical mind where you're questioning the CIA. And like I told you, they've used like fake vampires. They've put scary sounds in the woods. And they've hijacked what phenomena is. They've totally hijacked what real phenomena is. Hi, Paul from Newcastle. It's good to see you here. It must be, he's over actually in Newcastle in England. But here's the thing. He doesn't dig into it. He's just thinking that's one element. They're using it to covertly control the population so they don't question things, so they believe in nonsense. But there's a real element to it. There's something real going on there because they're hiring these people to contact demons, to contact other creepy entities that they possibly get information from. That there's this idea that they think that you can tap into other realms to get information from other beings. I mean, Aleister Crowley, in one of his drawings, it wasn't exactly like an alien, but it looked alien-esque. He was contacting and tapping into something and getting this information, and he drew the being like it was kind of alien looking. So it's funny that we have these grays. And they were using Crowley and his rituals as a template in how to expand and contact different entities. It is like could they possibly, I'm just posing a question here, could they possibly have gotten technological information and about the internet, about certain things, on how to do certain things, or be inspired or something whispered in their ear after they make contact on, how to go about creating different forms of communication that supersede our regular communication that we would have had. We would have had to write to somebody, talk to somebody in person. There wouldn't have ever been a way where we would have been able, you wouldn't be able to watch me from afar wherever you are or send me a text in few seconds. Maybe some of that information has come from this channeling because they've been doing it since the 40s, 50s, 60s. I don't know. So I think there's one level for us that they tell us what it is, and there's one upper echelon level for them that they know where you channel the information from. And the fact that they used Aleister Crowley is interesting because he did channel. A lot of his books were written from channeled information right in temple, the pyramids in Egypt. And if you guys remember, we're over here in America, totally different energy. You go over to Pakistan, Turkey, Iraq, there is a different energy there. And I had my guest, Dee Dee Moonflyer, when she came on, she was doing dance instructor over in Turkey, and she felt it. They're very different, very ancient. So perhaps you can channel something easier over there. Like I said, he was in Egypt and his wife channeled it, and she didn't know anything about this stuff. So I find it interesting that they used Crowley. Not surprising entirely, since Jack Parsons was a Thelemite and worked for NASA on developing rocket technology. But you got to wonder how much, if they're doing this, how much information they're getting from some source that they want us to believe is evil and to stay away with. Maybe it is evil. Maybe we should stay away from it. I don't know. But it's particularly interesting. And the infiltration of seances, like a lot of seances were faked. A lot of stuff in spirituality, they used kind of tricks. And they mentioned that in the article, like magician tricks. That's why they want you to do things in the dark. Like the same with paranormal research. Well, why do you need to sit in the dark? Well, because the cameras can't see what you're about to trick people. So there are scam artists, there's cons, but I think there's a real element and a place where your mind goes to get information that the CIA was very, very interested in. I think I have one more video here we're going to go through and look at, but it is so... Miss Renee says, I am sensitive and have had contact with the dead and demons. Yeah. It's a common thing. And I personally think all this technology that they're forming, think of Neuralink, think of Starlink, everything around the planet, I think it makes it harder. There was, when electricity was first being installed in streets in major cities, people, I think in London, was it? They were complaining that they couldn't communicate with God anymore, that it was interrupting. So there's people who believe that, electricity is a form of, it's a living creature, living form, and it's natural. But I think what they're doing with this and all the technology and the surveillance, they're trying to kind of mimic this fake God that watches us and goes, that's what they're doing. They're emulating that. They're making it come true in the most massive way globally, where I don't suspect the creative source is watching us going, excuse me, I saw that. I doubt it. That doesn't mean you don't have to be a good person, but I doubt it. But it's this weird, it's not just for technology, it's also for surveillance, it's for control, and they want to make sure you're not doing some kind of mind thought on them. I'm sure of it, because that is a thing. Tulpas, all these type of experimentation, the Philip experiment, it's out there where people were making something happen, something form, something show up. I had it as an experience, which I won't go over on this episode of the show. I will take a little pause here to remind you, though, to show up on Thursday's show. We're going to be talking to a real self-professed vampire hunter, researcher, Dennis Carroll. That's 9 p.m. Eastern, so that'll be there. Michigan Rob's coming next Thursday. I think next Tuesday we're going to go over a little more softer version of Wicca. We're going to talk about someone from Canada who was originally from England. We'll talk about his rituals. And I'll have some video clips. I've got some footage. And please follow a lot of the links, like especially TikTok, and go to the shorts on this channel because I'm uploading little archival videos that I find, collecting it all over the place. In fact, I'm going to show you this kind of clip. San Francisco. We're talking about San Francisco, the CIA operating there. And I'm going to get you to feel the feels of what it felt like in those times in the occultism. You can see it has a dark feel. It's not like a light feel. I've been in many holistic stores that have a really light, airy, clean, sunny, beautiful feel to them. And this one in San Francisco has a dark BDM feel to it. So, I mean, it's up to you. It depends what you want. But it's got a really dark feel. There we are, right under the shorts. My retro owl, which, by the way, guys, I bought it. I went back and bought it. I didn't buy it. I took a picture of it. But I went back and bought the 1970s retro owl. So we're going to put him up on the wall soon. He's right there. I don't know. I got to give him a name, too. He needs a name. Maybe I'll be like, hey, guys, give him a name. Pop it in the comments. A name. Doesn't mean I'm going to name him that. Well, let's talk. This is an occult store, San Francisco, 1970s. This is up here on my shorts. It's also up on TikTok. I'll be putting more archive videos. It's creepy. Okay. Sorry I messed that one up, but you can see it just gives you this idea of how dark it gets. And it doesn't have to really be, it doesn't have to be that dark. You don't have to have, say, crazy elements when you're exploring certain things, especially if you're going up. Like a lot of that's base level fear. He said he couldn't hear anything. I think the volume was low. That's weird. Oh, no, we're not going to promote that short. There's a lot of screaming in the background, sound effects stuff. It's kind of like going to the House of Horrors. And that's, I don't want to say that, there's never any spooky element to anything, because there is. One of the things that I do notice about our culture, though, is we want it to be Halloween all year round. Right? Like we want it to be, and Halloween is supposed to come on October 31st, and we're supposed to move with the cycles of the planet. So when it's summer, we have to go with that. When it gets into the darker time of the year, that's when we celebrate that. And people kind of want to just sort of, I don't know, stay stagnant and not move with the energy. That's what I notice about our culture and the occult and stuff like that. And for me, it's like, okay, well, I will move with the cycles because I'm on this planet. I know people will be like, are we on a planet? Is it round? Do you know what the universe is? Well, I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. But I know there's seasons. I know there's cycles. And I kind of like to go with it because it keeps the energy live. And that's why I kind of open the windows up in the house when the air is crisp, and let the energy flow and keep movement. Because it's live movement. You don't want to. And that was my issue with Anton LaVey and his black house. Dead energy. It just felt heavy. There's a time for that. And then there's a time that's about the seasons. And it just feels like the CIA and all of these people have turned everything into this like creepy demonic shithole. Like that's all they want to channel. It's like there's a time for darkness in the world. It's like when it gets darker in the world. And the veil's supposed to get thinner and you're supposed to have this communication. But it's also depends where you live on the planet where that is going to happen. Like it's weird that Australia time controllers and cube wars. Yeah. Time controllers and cube wars. Yeah, it's so bizarre. So when I see the CIA approaching it in this way, I think this is power. This is not about being one or connected with other people. This is about power and control. That's a totally different avenue. And it's one that, in my opinion, has been growing since, whenever there's an empire. So probably the first time someone was like, hey, let's do, let's plant a garden. Let's plant some crops. As soon as we had that, it's about power and control. You don't move with the land the way most native cultures do. And it seems forevermore, it's about expanding and controlling all those little indigenous cultures. It's not just native cultures. It's like the indigenous people of United Kingdom, the indigenous people that might have lived in Germany. There were all these little cultures. And it's about taking over, taking control, controlling the mindset, villainizing whatever their religion was, and making them afraid, creating a heaven and hell, et cetera, et cetera. It goes on and on and on. And you can see the CIA manipulating people and hoping, and they've got to get more crafty, right? They've got to get more, man, they've been good lately. They have been crafty as heck. I tell you, they have. The whole thing with yeah. I won't get into politics, but they fool so many people. And I think it's because we're brainwashed. These are actually, this is an article about I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I'll put it in the comments. It talks about abuse allegations of Ed and Lorraine Warren, and it's creepy. Weird. I'll put it in the comments for you guys. You can check it out. But it's why I think there's something weird. There was something weird with them and their demonology stuff and their take on it, because Ed Warren was such a shyster. He was such a promoter. But yet I think there was, he's a promoter of that whole idea of exorcism and demonologists are who they sought out. I have zero proof that the CIA wanted him, but if someone said, hey, we found information, it wouldn't surprise me. So the witches' coven, infiltrating seances, parapsychologists, ghost hunting, remote viewing, demonologists, all those different areas they're going into. They're using Aleister Crowley. They are, breaking up different covens. They are finding out different mind control techniques. They are also finding out what people believe in the phenomena so they can put it out there on TV and control how the population acts. But at the same time, they are obviously exploring different avenues of information collection, of power collection, of they're exploring connecting with different deities to see if it's real, if it really works, if it gives them a one up over maybe Russia, I don't know, somewhere, because Russia was experimenting with stuff and they were definitely experimenting with remote viewing. And we know remote viewing is real. It's scientific. The stuff is out there. They've remote viewed different locations and have proven to be accurate. You can check out Joe Rogan interviews that guy. His name evades me right now. You can go check that out on Joe Rogan show. He talks all about it. It's very scientific. So this idea that none of this stuff is scientific and it's all silly and it's all crazy is just, it's not entirely true. They might want you to think that, but that's not entirely the whole truth, because there is definitely something to remote viewing. And I imagine that there's something, if you're a really good witch, if you're really good at what you do and you've had lots of practice, that there's something to contacting the dead, contacting different spirits, etc., etc., etc. Okay, guys. I think that's what I'm going to do for the show today. We'll probably get on another show and talk about different types of Wicca and leaders that I feel are pretty positive, that I actually like. The idea that Sybil Leek is like this good energy just made me feel icky. I didn't think she had good energy at all. I thought she had bad energy. I'm going to show you this little clip here. I just want to remind you guys of kind of how creepy the Warrens are. We're going to show you this, and then we'll be signing out. If you guys have any questions, pop it up, or comments, or experiences. Do you know anyone in the CIA that has testimony? I wish my husband was here to add to it, or anything else they had to, but he's not. So check out this one. This is that demon that the Warrens have kind of found an effigy of in Connecticut, right by Sandy Hook. I want to replay this one.
Called me up and brought the picture here. What's in back of you here, though, Tony? This idol. Yeah, what is satanic idol? That's very dangerous. I didn't want you to bump into that.
About 6'6", I guess, 7 feet tall, I guess.
That was found in the Sandy Hook area over by Newtown. A hunter had found it, a young hunter, and it belonged to a group of Satanists, powerful group in this area. And this young man was almost killed 3 times for revealing where this idol was. It was in a grotto of rocks where a number of sacrifices of animals had occurred. Could have even been human sacrifices sometimes. But we brought it back here to the museum. We had notified the police of it.
We can come around here and get a shot of it.
Yes, we can. And Lorraine, one day soon after we got it, was thrown 25 feet through the air. She was in a catatonic state for 3 days. So this group was extremely powerful.
Okay, maybe in this corner. How about
the tiger?
Tiger skin, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I played that before. I just want to remind you, because I feel like there's something going on there in Connecticut with now both the dogs. They're going to do a dog fight right here. So they're telling me you cap up that show. They're like, you cap up that show. So there is something to that area, and the fact that they found that effigy in Sandy Hook, and we know how school shootings go. We know who's running it. Hal Puthoff, my husband showed up. Thank you so much. Hal Puthoff was on Joe Rogan show talking about remote viewing. Check it out. It's a good show. It's a good show. I enjoyed it, and it was very informative, and it's real stuff. So MK often. Dig deeper into it if you dare. Don't go too crazy. Remember what I talk about. You are not the little you. You are part of a system. You matter. If your thoughts didn't matter, they wouldn't be trying to control them so much. And stay away from large gatherings. Stay away from university experimentation. That's for damn sure. Don't donate your money. Don't wear their logos. Bad stuff to do. And, limit your time that you give to them, because that stuff, and always remember, someone's always trying to control your mind. I mean, I guess, technically trying to influence your mind, but, I'm not going to send an agent out if you're like, hey, I don't agree with you, Melissa. I'm going to be like, oh, well, what do you think? Right? So I really appreciate you guys coming to the show. I'm going to sign off. My dogs are going to start a war. They're going to be summoning a demon here if I don't get my ass moving. All right, guys. I really appreciate you. Remember, Thursday show 9 p.m. I am on the show with Todd Wood and Walter Bosley. Saturday at 6 p.m. Mountain Time. I'll post that link under the posts. You guys chill and take care and have a good evening.